So, hello. So, today we're going to learn about ISO. So, basically, what is ISO in terms of photography, cinematography, or even videography? So, ISO is basically the sensitivity of the sensor now to light, how the sensor reacts to light. So, basically, the ISO can be adjusted, however, without changing the aperture or shutter speed, so that you're able to now well expose your images or even expose your subject. So the ISO has different factors that affect your image. It can either increase your brightness to your image and still bring in grain or noise to your image, because now ISO affects the sensitivity of light to the sensor. So with this, the sensor tends to have a reaction to the light. If you make the sensor more sensitive, it reacts to more light. If you decrease the sensitivity of the sensor, you tend to decrease the way it reacts to light. Basically, that's how ISO works. And to dive deeper into it, we learn that ISO also helps to control brightness without changing aperture or shutter speed. So mostly in indoor settings, you tend to have a little bit of darkness, or it tends to be a little bit dark. So outdoors, we have a different value of ISO that we tend to work with indoors and also during the night. So a lot of cameras tend to have nowadays have an adjusted level of ISO, where they are capable to have good amount of light allowed into the sensor during the night, so you're able to take photos that are well exposed. The Sony cameras have a good feature, of which they are also tend to be denoted as the G's of low light. So basically, when we have different values we give to the camera when you're tending to put in your settings in ISO. So basically, when you're outdoor, you'll tend to, because it's very sunny and it's bright, you tend to have a lower value, which is basically literally like 100 ISO, so that you are able now to adjust your settings from there, now from the aperture to the shutter speed, so that you're able to have now a well exposed photo. So when you have your ISO at a higher number in outdoors, it tends to be very overexposed. Example, when you have a photo taken during daytime at an ISO of 800, not unless you have a very high shutter speed, so that you're able to compensate for that ISO range. And then we have when you're in a shadowy place, a room, you tend to have an ISO of basically either 200 or even 400, so that you're able to have a balanced image. For example, right now I'm recording at with my cameras at an ISO of 400. You tend to see that my image is not overexposed or underexposed, it's quite balanced. Then basically, when you're doing even events, night events, or you tend to have an ISO of around 800 to 1000, so that you're able to not have noise in your images. I've told you, the ISO tends to create that make the sensor sensitive to light, so that your image, it compensates for the other settings. So ISO is basically one of the last settings you need to come to when you're adjusting lighting for your camera. You first either start with the aperture or shutter speed, but most people tend to have a constant shutter speed they do photography or videography with. So for video, most of the time we tend to record at either 24 frames per second or 25 frames per second, for maybe if your content is going a lot on the social media platforms. Then yes, so when you want to record slow-mo, that's when you tend to have higher shutter speeds of maybe 60 to 120, yes, so that you're able now to get that motion and maybe capture the motion in slow motion, and and maybe freeze even motion when it's moving in fast. So you'll just take note the lesson. High ISO ensures the faster response to light towards the sensor. So this means high ISO are good for low light situations and also good for capturing fast moving subjects. Yes, so in the next lesson we'll be diving in depth about learning the settings of your cameras, from the aperture priority, shutter priority. Yes, so make sure you subscribe, share and leave a like. Thumbs up.